I actually look at that as an asset. We can compare sort of what the world was before versus where we are now and see what the trend is for that.
Hi, everyone. My name is Stephanie Corby, and I am Practice Director at Enterprise Strategy Group. Today, I'm joined by Gabe Knuth, who is the lead analyst for end user computing at Enterprise Strategy Group. Hi, Gabe. How are you?
Hey, Steph, glad to be here.
Great. So you've had obviously a very busy 2023, and I know that you expect 2024 to be just as busy, specifically in the EUC space. What's on your mind heading into this year?
So I've got three main EUC trends that I'm tracking heading into 2024. Gen AI and as it relates to productivity apps, PC as a service, and kind of endpoint management, but starting kind of with PC as a service because that puts a change to how we procure and manage PCs a little bit. And then the future of VDI and DAS.
So, of course, there's an AI component, correct?
Yeah, but I feel like much of the AI conversation last year was really high level stuff. Regulations, data quality, infrastructure, GPUs and NPUs and things like that. In EUC, all I really care about is where the rubber meets the road. So, how users are actually using all of the things that all that infrastructure and backend stuff is actually outputting to the end users. And so my focus is going to be on what software vendors are doing and service providers are doing to incorporate Gen AI into their apps. Think of things like Microsoft Copilot or Adobe Firefly or Google Duet, and then the enhancements that other software platforms are making, like Zoom and WebEx and things like that, they're doing to enhance their meetings.
Yeah, there's a lot to get your arms around as it relates to Gen AI, obviously. You also mentioned PC as a service. What are you thinking on that front?
A couple of things, really. First, I conducted some research last year on endpoint device trends and unearthed a ton of interesting things about organizational priorities when they buy endpoint devices. One of the key emerging areas is PC as a service, which has universal interest of organizations of all size. And I say emerging because this concept has been around for a long time. It's a lot like leasing PCs, except PC as a service adds in management services. The degree of management services kind of varies between vendors and service levels and things like that. But the idea is that PC as a service sort of takes over the lifecycle management of procurement, maybe level 1, level 2 support, decommissioning PCs, replacing them with new ones, and remove some of the heavy lifting that has traditionally been associated with just overall PC lifecycle management. Secondly, and sort of in the same vein, is I'm watching in the PC market to see what the impact of Gen AI is going to be, because now we're hearing that while a lot of the heavy lifting for AI is happening in the cloud, those models that are being trained in the cloud and fine-tuned in the cloud are actually going to be executed using local hardware. That cloud-based hardware and the GPUs and NPUs or whatever that are there to support that and train those models are expensive. And so the more we can farm out to the endpoints, the better. And so hardware vendors are building hardware into the PCs themselves. And I wonder if that's going to cause a little bit of a resurgence or pump some more energy into the endpoint device, like laptop/PC, desktop PC market. I don't know for sure that's going to happen, but that's definitely an area I'm going to keep track of this year because there's definitely a lot of activity there.
Wow, very interesting. Who would have thought that, PC endpoint would be so hot in 2023 heading into this year? So finally, you mentioned that VDI and DAS are on your radar as well this year. And I know that you're actually planning to do some new research in the early part of the year. I'm curious, what are you thinking on that front in terms of projected trends?
Yeah, so I'm super excited about this because, as you know, I've spent most of my career in this area, in desktop virtualization, VDI, and DAS before we even called it that. This quarter, I'm going to launch a deep dive research project into VDI and DAS, and I'm excited about this for three reasons, really. First, the last time we took a deep dive into VDI and DAS at ESG was before I joined. It was in March of 2020. That's when the results published. Literally the same week that the world shut down with COVID, we published the results of our survey. And so it's really, at this point, a really cool snapshot of what life was like in 2019 with respect to desktop virtualization. So I actually look at that as an asset. We can compare sort of what the world was before versus where we are now and see what the trend is for that. I also want to use this research as a way to get a grip on Windows apps and Windows app utilization out there. Frankly, the only reason we have Windows is because of Windows applications, right? And the only reason we have desktop virtualization, VDI, DAS, whatever, is because we need to deliver those Windows apps to non-Windows devices or even Windows devices. We need to deliver them to any device in any location, any connection. Remote workers now are prevalent. That's why desktop virtualization exists, is to get Windows apps to these people. What we don't know, we have anecdotes about all the Windows apps that are out there, but we don't have quantitative data about the Windows apps, the types they have, the complexity of the environments. So I want to take a deeper look and actually quantify the number of Windows apps and what the Windows app management situation is out there. And third, I want to assess VDI and DAS usage to understand where organizations are placing their workloads. We've got a lot, prior to COVID, a lot of the resources were delivered from on-premises, and then we couldn't get hardware, and so we started deploying stuff in the cloud. There are hybrid environments. I've heard equal numbers of stories on both sides that say we're putting all of our resources in the cloud now, or we're pulling our resources back from the cloud. All I have are anecdotes, and I want to put real quantitative data behind that. And this survey will get me that data, and I think that'll be really valuable for us and just for the EUC world in general.
This is exciting stuff. You have a big year ahead of you. Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be busy. I'm looking at the roadmap.
Well, Gabe, thanks so much for your keen insights today. And for everyone out there, thanks for listening, and stay tuned for more market insights from TechTarget and Enterprise Strategy Group.